Celtics, 45-12, 8-game lead in the East. 5 games over anyone in the West. They're first in offensive rating, third in defensive rating. They're plus 10.5 net rating, which has them tied for 9th all time. They're on a list that includes...
Wait, say that again?
Yeah, they're 9th all time in net rating right now. The list includes the 96 Bulls, 13.4, highest one. The 97 Bulls, the 2017 Warriors, the best team in the century. The 16 Spurs did not win the title. The 08 Celtics, the 92 Bulls, the 71 Bucks, the 16 Warriors did not win the title. And then they're tied with the 72 Lakers, who did win the title. This is, by net rating, the best team in the last 7 years. I asked Sean Grandy for this because I know he keeps track of weird shit like this. So thanks to Sean. They've had 35 games this year where they've been up by 15 points or more. They've had 24 games where they've been up by 20 or more. The 08 Celtics had 35. They're number 1 in rebounds. They're number 1 in 3 points attempted. Their net rating stuff, their best 5-man lineup, that's 4th. Best 2-man lineup, Tatum and White, that's 2nd, plus 12.6. Their best 3-man lineup, Porzingis, Tatum, and White, or Porzingis, Brown, and White. Both of those are the best 3-man lineups in the league. All the Porzingis numbers are amazing. The advanced stats say that this team actually could get a little better. I think there's a world, I think the Celtics feel this too, that they might actually have another level to go to, and the only hindrance would be the fact that they have this huge lead for the 1 seed and they don't really have a shitload of urgency. They're in an incredible spot right now, at least to win the East. And with Denver kind of staring at them, they know they can play with Denver. And this is the most optimistic I've been as a Celtic fan since 08.
Okay, what do you think of the hesitation? Because there seems to be like real national hesitation on them. I get texts from people and be like, you really think they're that good? And I was like, I think they're that good, but I understand your concerns.
Yeah, because I have the same concerns, because it does feel like the right kind of street fighting team. You know, like the type of team the Heat had last year, the type of team the Knicks on paper could have when all their guys come back. Just a gritty, physical team that turns it into an ugly game that's decided in the last 5 minutes. I guess would be the hesitation, and then Porzingis would be the other thing. What am I getting from him? Even yesterday, Joe Mass has him out there against the Knicks. There's 2.5 minutes left. They're up 16, and Porzingis is running around. I'm like, just take him out. Just every minute that this guy is healthy as we get toward April, especially with this giant lead, I don't want to see him in any danger ever. He's too important. So I guess those, and then Joe Maz, just the fact that he hasn't been there. Joe Maz right now, for any coach over 100 games, has the highest winning percentage in the history of the league by like almost half a point. So it's tough to nitpick. I think the best thing you can say about the Celtics is you're really nitpicking if you're looking for stuff. They have a lot of answers in a lot of different directions. And if the reasons you're going to ding them are Tatum's too young, I don't love their bench, is Porzingis going to stay healthy? Like those, you're nitpicking. That would be the case for them.
Lowest corner 3 percentage. I try to find stuff. About, okay, when it's late and we know they have the highest 3-point frequency of any team, they take the most per their possessions. I did this, I think, a couple weeks ago where I talked about Tatum on the isolation drives.
Yeah.
And that his free throw rate is way below all the other guys. Like people in Minnesota think Ant doesn't get calls. And a lot of that becomes like Ant doesn't try for the call, right? The way a Luka does.
Yeah.
Tatum doesn't try for the calls the way some of these other guys do. And clearly the last couple of years, like Tatum's drives and his aggressiveness. And, you know, when I think about the street fighting part of it, I kind of agree. But then I think back and being like, hey, 27 other teams would take their playoff failures. And if they were really soft, like, don't they lose to Philly last year when they're down 3-2?
Or Milwaukee,
like
game 6.
Yeah, or go back to the Milwaukee. Like, think about some of the Tatum resume games that he has for his playoff career already. and you're going to tell me like that guy can't get it done?
By the way, Tatum still 25 years old right now.
Yeah, and by the way, like the other part when you start packaging it all in together, because like I saw somebody the other day on one of the shows say, "Hey, this group's been together a long time," and it's like, well, not this version of the
two
group.
Of the guys have. Yeah.
And if you're knocking Tatum and Brown for 18 and not beating LeBron in Game 7, like that's they were just ahead of schedule with some of this stuff. You want to talk about a bad top of a conference? Go back and look at like that 18 East.
Right,
it was
they probably should have lost to Washington.
Well, they definitely should have lost to Washington. I couldn't believe at the time that they did beat Washington. So there's these arguments that I'll hear, but then I think of all these other guys that like have nothing on their resume, nothing like Tatum's game against Milwaukee that you bring up, or the Game 7 51 points last year. And yeah, I thought they lost to a better team in Golden State 2 years ago in the finals, and the offense got clunky and everything. But like when I look at, hey, do they settle too much here? What are some of the clutch numbers saying? Like a lot of the numbers still look really, really good. So this fatal flaw of the settling three when they're closing out a game, I don't know how you're 45-12 if it's as big of a problem as the way it gets talked about. And like you bring up the Knicks and going, okay, maybe when OG's back and whatever ends up happening with Randall, and I know they had him working out in street clothes the other day, but like that's still a TBD with Randall. OG seems far more optimistic about when he comes back. And some of these Knick numbers you can say with two different players is similar to Phoenix, but run through the top 8 in both conferences. If you go to the expanded standings, the Knicks are 12-21 against teams over 500. It's the worst record of any top 8 seed in either conference. And I know what a Knicks fan would say is, well, we're not that team anymore. Okay, but
can we see it for 3 weeks?
Yeah, that's all. Can you just see put together a really good month with a bunch of nice wins? And by the way, New York had their incredible stretch, even missing some of those people, which is just a credit to Brunson and how good he's been. But I don't know if it's fear or intelligence that tells you they can't beat a Knicks team in the playoffs.
There's two things that are just so people know that aren't really focused or watching them that much. There's two things that are just completely different about them now from last year. One is that they're more malleable than they were last year, right? They can go a little smaller, they can go a little bigger. The Porzingis thing, there's just games when he's just, the other team has no guy to defend him. And if they try to do that fluky bullshit, like put a smaller guy on him, the Celtics just immediately punish him. I think Joe Mazzulla has been really good about that this season. Like we're not letting you guard Porzingis that way. We're going to immediately take advantage of that. The other piece is Tatum, where there's been subtle differences with them. I was watching my old college roommate, John Richard, was in town. We were watching the Knicks last night, and we were just talking about Tatum, Fitchburg's own John Richard. We're talking about how Tatum bullies people a couple times a game in a way that he just didn't do last year. And I was thinking about him as a power forward in the 2020s, right? You don't think of Tatum as a power forward. Like, what is he? He's just a forward, right? We don't really have positions anymore. We basically have guards, wings.
He could play two guard if he wanted to, like if it was a weird lineup. But yeah, you're right. He's a forward.
So he hits threes. He gets to the line. He can post up. He can pass out of double teams. He can rebound. He can switch on defense, and he's durable. But he also can play basically 4 positions for them, because they could even play him at small ball center. They don't really do it that much, but I do think there's a world in the playoffs where they could. But I was thinking about the power forwards we grew up with, right? So you go back to the early 2000s. Duncan, KG, C-Webb, Dirk, Rasheed, Elton Brand, Pau Gasol, Jermaine O'Neal, Antoine Walker, Kenya Martin, Juwan Howard. Like it was a real position with guys who they could post up, they rebounded, they usually had 10 plus rebounds a game. They could protect the basket. And now you go into 2020s, who are the power forwards? It's like Giannis is definitely a power forward, even though he's probably really a center. Tatum, LeBron's, I guess, a power forward now. He's a power point guard. I don't know what the fuck he is. Randall, Lauri Markkanen, Towns, Paolo, Aaron Gordon, Jabari Smith, maybe Jalen Johnson. But how many forwards do you think are averaging 8 rebounds a game right now? If you had to guess.
I don't know off the top of my head. Go ahead.
7. Giannis, Randall, Tatum, Markkanen, Jalen Johnson, John Collins, and Jabari Smith.
John
Tatum's
Collins
averaging 9 a
pulling,
game. John Collins
boards.
randomly made it. But my point is, Tatum is this kind of stealth asset as this kind of 2020s power forward. And I think we're going to see it in Team USA too, because you need those forwards who can, rebound, but also shoot threes. And he's a really unique asset. And if you're going to make the MVP case for him, which I would not, because I think there's better players, part of the reason this team is special is because how malleable he is now. The fact that he can rebound, he can defend, he can jump out, he's a two-way guy. And I think his little growth in all these different spots, the stats don't really sum it up. His stats are pretty similar to where they were last year, but eye test, it's different. So that's my little Tatum rant.
PER is the same. Win shares per 48's almost to the dot. The box score plus minus stuff is like the same.
Percentages, shooting, all pretty much similar.
He's awesome. And the only problem is that he's not ever somebody that people would say is the best player in the league. And
because he's
for
not
Boston or for whatever, but if he ends up being the 5th or 6th or whatever, like hell, I used to have a hard time when people put him ahead of Booker. But this year, I think you probably have to, even though I wish maybe Tatum had a little of that Booker, like whatever goes on in Booker's head, that would be maybe the perfect version of Tatum. But then it just goes too far with like, oh, he's not this. He's not, like, I just hear from my buddies. I'm like, you guys are a little spoiled with him.
He's 25. Just has to be mentioned constantly. He's not the guy he's going to be yet.
I don't know. I like whatever this is incredible. My bigger issue was like the Jaylen Brown stuff.
Okay.
It kind of dawned on me this year.
Should I refill my Michael Jordan Dream Team cup before you go into this? How long is this going to go?
It's not going to go long because I'm going to pivot it back to you because you watch it more intently than I do. But like Jaylen has smashed through any ceiling I've ever had for him. I've said that before. Like the draft early on, okay, he's pretty good, but whatever. And then it just keeps going up and up. And I voted him all NBA last year, and I know there's some of the analytics community would say that he actually wasn't as good or whatever, and that's fine. But I've really tried to like pay attention to him more this year because I figure with Porzingis coming in, like you just knew he was going to have less opportunities, and so some of the numbers across the board are down because he just has less shots. He is as good as anybody of making something out of something where I'm like, what? Oh, it went in again? There are so many possessions with him where I'm like, he's just going to kind of pull up and turn around and hit a jumper from there.
Like if you freeze framed it as he's midway through the move, you'd be like, oh my God, this is going to hit the backboard.
Right. And then if you're you're just like, it went in again.
It's he's a no yes guy.
But I don't know that he does a lot of like, he may take the pressure off of everybody else because he can find ways to score when everything's broken down. But I think he's really kind of doing his own thing. And we're this many years into it. And I wonder if they get stopped again in the East, if that's the real, like, because it was happening before Ime and the team had turned around. Remember how miserable it was watching them a couple years ago. And they had one of the all-time turnarounds, end up in the NBA Finals. Nobody's talking about breaking up Jaylen and Tatum anymore. And that's not necessarily what I'm even presenting here. But I look at him and I'm consistently confused by this incredibly productive, talented player in a way where I'm like, is it as good as the scoring is? Is it, by the way, they're winning a million games. So it's not like there's this piece that's, screwing them up and they're flirting with just being over 500 and being a 4 seed. I don't know. I'm asking you, what do you think it is that I'm seeing? Because it just feels a little different, or maybe it's always been this way. And I'm just finally admitting like, yeah, he's an awesome player, but I don't know.
I can't tell if you're making the case for him or against him.
Exactly. Then you listened because that's what it feels like.
So here's the best thing I'll say about him. You probably knew some girl in college or after college who carried herself in a way that made her more attractive. There's something about the demeanor that was part of the package.
Perfect segue. Just in Aspen for a few days. You're like, are you serious? And we're like, or is it the outfit?
Right. he carries himself like he's one of the best guys on a team that's won 5 titles.
You're right.
He has the confidence and a little bit of a swagger of somebody who's actually done more than he's probably done. On the other hand, he's done a lot. Like I think he's played 100 playoff games already. It's like 109?
I have it up here. I'll grab it.
Yeah, he's been in a lot of big games. He's played against a lot of great players. He's held his own a few times. In the 22 finals, he was probably the best guy in the Celtics. How many playoff games?
We are at 112.
112 playoff games. Guy has been in all kinds of situations. He plays in front of one of the best home crowds. And we kind of know what his faults are. To me, he's another 90-10 guy where 90% of it's great and the 10% is really glaring. And he'll have these moments where there'll be a breakaway, the ball's going the other way and he's dribbling and you just like, oh, he's going to get caught from behind and they're going to poke it out of bounds. I know what's going to happen. And then it does. And you're like, oh man, Jaylen. The 10% is really glaring with him. Everybody's got the 10% though. My thing is he's
his 10%, because his 10% is like,
it's a pulsating 10%.
Right.
I'll fully admit it. Is he overpaid? Of course. Is LeBron overpaid? Would you want to pay LeBron $50 million this year? You probably wouldn't. I think most guys, when you get over 40, they're probably going to be overpaid unless it's one of the 5 best guys in the league. I still think him and Tatum together, the fact that those guys really like playing with each other and care about each other, that's a really important piece of this. Because even there's got to be that little twinge sometimes where it's like, why isn't it me? Why isn't this my team? I don't think he thinks that way. I think those guys look out for each other. I was told a story, the All-Star game, when everybody was going for each other for the MVP. It hit that point, and I was barely watching the All-Star game, but the East was up 20, so Dame was in there and Halliburton and Jaylen Brown was going for it. And Tatum went to Doc Rivers and he said, "Give Jaylen my minutes. I want to see him get MVP." I think those guys like each other. Like to me, that's a real dynamic. Those guys have grown up together, and I think they look out for each other.
That was talked about when they weren't playing well, right? It was those guys. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. And I think it's a really good point there. Although, as an aside, is it actually uncool to pursue the All-Star Game MVP now?
Maybe it is. I don't know. Goes to the records. Yeah, that's true.
By the way, I don't want to
pursue it.
I want a definitive Bill Simmons line in the sand in basketball history where an all-star MVP no longer means anything. Just give me the year. Tell me when it starts, because I do not want to hear.
I think it started this year.
No, it's already started previous years. I'm just saying I need you to be the judge and jury on this one. Go back and look, because when somebody's like debating somebody, same thing as the gold medal thing, which is my least favorite, the sooner you have to bring up somebody's Olympic gold medal for their Hall of Fame case, the worse their case is.
Yeah.
But if you're going to tell me like it's not the numbers, it's not the titles, but he won All-Star MVP in 2028,
All-Star MVP should not be used ever.
Well, there was a time when it did matter.
Yeah,
you kind of had to have one.
In the 20th century.
Yeah, exactly. But so
I like the theory. So a couple of people were saying how when his career was kind of running to an end and he stopped making the All-Star game, that's when the All-Star game turned into something else, because he really cared about it and it made other guys care because how much he cared. And then Westbrook always really cared about it. So there's always at least 2 guys that were like, I care, I'm trying to win. And then other guys are trying. Now it's like we don't have those guys anymore.
By the way, I'll give Westbrook this. He can't be on a court and not want to bust everybody's ass. And he's always going to be like, I'm going to try to get 20 rebounds. Yeah, right, I'm going to try to, can I get 50 points? He can't. There's no off button for him. So the All-Star game is made for him. If he gets back in one, which is probably not going to happen, he would win MVP. But yeah, I mean, it's back to the Jaylen thing. Like, would you rather have Jaylen Brown or 2 Derek Whites?
2 Derek Whites. Well, I love Derek White. The bigger question to me is, Derek White, does he mean more to this team than Jaylen Brown does? And I think you can make the case he does, and there's a lot of advanced metrics that support it. But I still really value the Tatum Brown as a combo, and I like rooting for it. I like that we're in year 7 or 8. We've been talking about it in this podcast for a while. I'm with you. I think if they blow it this year, if this year is disappointing in some way, and they're looking at, having to pay White, having to pay Drew Holiday, also having to pay Jaylen $50 million. I don't see how all three of those guys come back if they don't win. Because they're going to pay White. I don't know what Drew's market is, and he's sacrificed the most.
Yeah, I mean, his numbers, but look at the free agent list. Okay?
That's what I mean.
And you could just
could it
see
be a Van
team,
Vliet situation where somebody's like,
absolutely,
here's $120 million for 3 years, our team option year 3.
I have a monologue ready to go where I'm at the point after this trade deadline, because we had already gone for like 3 hours or 4 hours. I don't know if there's a bad contract anymore in the NBA. I mean, yes, there is Jordan Poole, but it's not about the existing contracts. It's, hey, we're a bad team and we have cap space and we have to spend it on somebody. So even though if you can't look at Drew Holiday's production and go, oh, this guy's slowing down, to your point, he's made the Ray Allen sacrifice.
He's so much fun to watch on defense. Both him and White, just some of the team defense stuff they do. I would encourage people to watch the two guards when the Celtics really have it dialed up. He's such a smart, jumping off people, jumping back, jumping into passing lanes, coming back out, coming down for a double team. His instincts, I'd never really watched him this carefully night after night after night, but his instincts on what to do. And then the way he protects the rim, him and White, I've never seen two guards protect the rim like this. They're two of the best shot blocking guards of the past 10 years. And they're both on the same team. So anyway, there's a lot of pressure on this season, I think, because of the price tag that's coming. And, teams are going to come after Jaylen if they don't win the title. Because there's not a lot of guys like him who have the kind of experience he has and the production. Randall, I feel like
he's still really good.
He's still really good. It's like Randall. When the Knicks fans complain about Randall, it's like, do you miss the 24-9 every night now that he's not playing? And you're watching Precious Achua airballing 11-footers from the foul line. Do you miss Randall now? It's nice to have the 24-9 every single night.